All right, some of you have already seen this post, and the post reads, Acetone turns reimagined Bred 4s into OG Bred 4s. Now, are you willing to damage a $230 pair of sneakers? Because I am. So to kick off this experiment, I started by removing the hang tag and laces and stuffing the sneaker with plastic bags. So the next step in the process was to tape off the midsole using painter's tape. Acetone is known to separate midsoles and eat away at paint, so the tape served as a protective barrier. All right, now that the shoe is all taped up, now it's time to saturate the upper with 91% rubbing alcohol. So the next thing I did was tape the threading. I was a little afraid of damaging it, but if you have a steady hand, then this step may be unnecessary. To sand down the leather, I used 220 grit sandpaper. I personally went with the Hercules sanding disc because it's easy to bend, and I was able to get into those smaller areas. So once I removed the tape, I made sure to clean up all of the missed areas, and I also brushed away any excess debris from sanding down the leather. You know what? A washed Bred 4 doesn't look that bad. I mean, I don't know if I would buy it, but I'm sure somebody out there would. It's just not for me though. So once I completed that step, I used the 320 grit sandpaper to sand the leather around the threading. All right, we're finally at the final stage, the stage that I've been waiting to do. This is to actually dye the suede black. You can use any type of dye you like. Just make sure that whatever dye you use is meant for suede and nubuck. So let's get to it. Now, because the sneaker had like a suede feel to it after I sanded down the leather, I thought black suede dye would do the trick. So I'm dyeing away, dying away. I got MF Doom playing in the background. The sneaker is looking great. And when that mother dried, so after applying 3 coats of suede dye, this sneaker was still coming out bluish black. And then it hit me, I was like, you know what, maybe it's not enough suede on this shoe for the suede dye to actually work. And since the shoe was predominantly leather, maybe leather dye would work. So I picked up the leather dye, started applying it all at the same time. I'm praying to God, I hope I did not ruin this sneaker. But after the dye dried, to my surprise, the dye actually didn't change color. So once the dye dried completely, I used Aussie leather conditioner to soften the leather, seal the dye, and give it a matte finish. I then used a horsehair brush and a cloth to buff the shoe and get rid of any excess conditioner left over, and here are the results. Okay, these actually came out pretty good. I'm very satisfied with how these turned out. Here's a quick comparison of the left and right shoe. As you can see, the retail shoe has that tumbled leather finish, whereas the altered shoe is much more flat. The tumbled leather is something I've never really been a big fan of. It just makes the shoe look cheap, and sometimes one shoe looks better than the other when it comes to the tumbled leather, so there's no consistency there, and that's just my opinion. Also, what I like about the altered shoe is that it's much darker and has a deeper black to it, so it actually looks more of a high quality shoe, and it doesn't change the overall aesthetic of the sneaker. So as for some frequently asked questions, I'm gonna go ahead and take this time in the video to answer some anticipated questions that I think you all might put in the comment section. So the first one being, how long did this process take? For me, this process took about 14 hours, and that was just me not knowing what I was doing at first. On top of that, filming the video, like filming everything I was doing in the process. So between doing the shoe itself and making sure that all of the video stuff was right, that took about 14 hours. But for you, if you're just doing the shoe with no distractions, one shoe could take you up to 4 to 5 hours to do, and that just depends on how much quality and effort you're putting into that shoe. But I would say on average, maybe 4 to 5 hours for each shoe. Next question, how long does the shoe take to actually dry in between coats? So this is an alcohol-based leather dye, so it doesn't take that long to dry. So I would say, like, if you did a coat, wait 1 to 2 hours for dry time, then go back, do another coat if you need to, wait another 1 to 2 hours to dry, and then go from there. So the next question, how many coats should I use? So it depends on what you're looking for. It depends on your desired outcome or your goal for the shoe. Me personally, I wanted it to be a very deep black, so it only took me about 2 coats to do that, and then I just touched up on some areas that were a little bit blotchy. So again, like maybe 1 to 2 coats, but if you're looking for it to be as dark as you can make it, maybe 3 coats. I think anything over 3 coats would be OD, but that's just my experience. So the next question is there any rub off? And to answer your question, yes, but it depends on the sealant that you use. Like, because you're using dye, a lot of that excess dye is gonna rub off onto your jeans, it's gonna rub off into your inner sock liner. But if you use a sealant, then you won't have that issue. But when it comes to the sealants, they all have a different type of after effect to them. So if you're looking for that matte look, some sealants may provide that look for you and others won't. So depending on what you're using, you could end up with a glossy look, which is, I'm sure some of you may not want that. But if that's what you're going for, then I would definitely use that. But just do your research on the different type of seals that they have out there for suede dye, leather dye, and you can make your decision based on that. So the next question is, after dyeing my shoes, will my shoes feel stiff? Yes, your shoes will feel stiff if you don't use any leather conditioner on it. So when you apply the dye and let it dry, the entire shoe is gonna feel very stiff. But once you apply that leather conditioner, it's gonna soften that leather for you, and it's gonna feel factory and actually have a factory look afterwards. So the next question, can I use acetone on my sneakers? Yes, you can, but be very careful. The only time I used acetone on these sneakers was when I accidentally got dye on the gray part of the midsole. You can use acetone to get rid of that. Like, that'll go away, and you just have to use a little bit of effort to keep rubbing at it, and it will fade out eventually. But if you end up getting acetone on the other parts of the midsole, such as the black part or the white part, those parts are pretty much painted on, and that acetone could eat up that paint, especially if you start rubbing away at it. So I would be very careful using the acetone, but I wouldn't advise using it on the upper or any other part of the shoe, just because acetone is very strong and you don't want to run the risk of actually damaging the shoe to where it's irreversible. Next question, my shoes look bronze after dyeing. What should I do? So after you dye the shoe and it completely dries, it will have like a bronze look to it, or a little bit of a goldish look to it. And that's just because of the excess dye that's on there. So again, once you start buffing away at that excess dye and use the leather conditioner, that bronze look will go away. Next question, is this shoe wearable? Yes, this shoe is very much so wearable. You just have to wait 48 hours for it to completely dry. Again, rub off any excess dye that's on there so that, or put a seal on it so that it doesn't rub off on your clothes. But again, 48 hours is a good time frame to let it dry, let everything soak in, and then you can wear your shoes no problem. And the last question, what happens if dye gets on the inner sock liner of your shoe? So it depends on the type of person you are. Some people are like, look, I'm wearing the shoe so no one is gonna see it. Other people are like, look, I want my inner sock liner to be pristine. So if you're that type of person that wants it to be pristine and you accidentally get dye on your inner sock liner, you can actually buy some cement gray or just gray paint from Angelus maybe. Just make sure that you use a lot of fabric softener so that when you do go to paint those areas, it doesn't change the fabric of the sock liner. All right, folks, then that'll do it for this video. If you got something useful out of it, definitely hit the like, consider subscribing if you haven't already. Also hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload new content. Until then, stay fresh, blessed, and free of stress, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.